when I started to read, Becky and I had a big discussion about this, that when you go into spiritual literature or even some psychology, people use the words differently. Some place they'll say happiness is external and joy is internal, and then you read somebody else and they will flip the definitions and have joy being external and happiness being internal, and some people use them interchangeably. So I thought, before I confuse everybody, I want to be clear that when I say the pursuit of happiness, that I'm using the word to signify something internal to us, something that we can't buy, and something that is not given to us by somebody else, something that we make the choice, a way of living that we make the choice to move through life in. And so let me give you an example of the confusion of the word. I've talked about Lama Surya Das a number of times. He's a monk and a teacher, and in one of his books he writes that he's from the U.S., but he spent years in India, and in 1971 he was in India, and the Dalai Lama was nearby giving a talk, so he decided to go hear the talk that the Dalai Lama was giving. And after the talk he took questions, and the first question he got was from a young American kid who said, "What's the meaning of life?" And just like that, the Dalai Lama looked at him and said, "The meaning of life is to be happy and to make others happy." And Surya Das said when he heard the Dalai Lama's response, he was really disappointed. Because he had learned in school that happiness was being selfish in some ways, that happiness was not a deep way of being. And so he went around feeling really that the Dalai Lama's answer wasn't sufficient. And he said, it took me years to change my mind and to appreciate what a profound response the Dalai Lama had given this young guy. He said, because it's easy to say what happiness is, but it's difficult to practice it. He said, what I came to learn is it's something that's much deeper, and it's not an escape when you're trying to self-medicate or when you're looking for self-gratification. He said, I realized that it's a deeply felt sense of joy and well-being that we can always carry around within us. He said, I see it as an attitude that we choose, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, to view, to interpret, and to experience the world. And he said that one day a Tibetan monk told him that he thought that the main problem that worldly people have in these days is that they're constantly seeking happiness and fulfillment outside themselves. So I've talked about Nasruddin before. Nasruddin is just a teaching mechanism that the Sufis use, and there's all kinds of debate about whether there was somebody really like him or whatever. But anyway, they use him. There are all different stories about this guy Nasruddin, and one of them is a story that one night, it's a very dark night, and he's on his hands and knees outside searching for something under a light. And one of his neighbors sees him, and the neighbor gets down on his hands and knees and starts to look and says, by the way, what are we looking for? And Nasruddin said, my keys. We're looking for my keys. And they look and look and look, and they can't find the keys. And finally, the neighbor says to him, are you sure this is why you lost them? And Nasruddin said, no, I didn't lose them here. And the neighbor said, then why are we looking here? He said, because I lost them over there, but it's dark over there, so I wanted to look in the light. Come on, it's better than that. And come on, that story's lasted since like the 1500s. And the point of this story is it doesn't do any good to look for something where it isn't. And so if we're going to be seeking and searching for happiness in our lives, it really, and I'm going to talk about this some more in a minute, it doesn't really pay to look outside, to look out here for happiness when all the time it's residing within us. And I saw an article by a woman this week who talked about the difference, and I don't want to go into this a lot, but she talked about the difference between success and happiness, and how so many people mix the two concepts up, and they think that success means happiness. And she said, if success meant, I love this, if success meant happiness, shouldn't Alec Baldwin be a really happy-go-lucky guy? And she said, happiness isn't a byproduct. Success is the byproduct of happiness. So I mentioned before that one of the books that we're doing is Spiritual Liberation by Michael Beckwith. And this last Tuesday, we just happened to cover the chapter where he talks about happiness. And he said, you know, happiness is our true nature. It's not just our true nature. He said it's with us from the moment that we come into existence. But one of the problems that so many of us have is that we never take the time to penetrate deeply enough to touch our own true nature. And he said, you know, we look outside for something that's never been lost. And I really like that. We look outside for something that's never been lost. And he said, you know, how many of us let society, celebrities, the media, TV, advertising, do the work of defining happiness for us and telling us how we're going to experience it. And as soon as we read that the other day, we got into a discussion, and I thought, you know, isn't that so true? When you watch TV, you know, aren't all the ads, whatever they are, telling us, you know, here, if you buy this car, you're going to really be happy. If you buy this makeup, or if you're a guy, if you buy this sports jacket, it's going to make you so happy, you'll have great experiences. And the truth is that really doesn't matter. And Michael says in Spiritual Liberation, he says, we realize happiness at the level of our understanding of happiness. We realize happiness at the level of our understanding of happiness. So what he's saying is, if your level of happiness is what they're telling you in the ads and on TV and in the media, that's how you're going to experience it. But there's another way, a deeper way to experience it, and it's a choice. Happiness is really a choice, and our deepest roots transcend the external events or whatever else that gives us the external conditions that give us happiness. Joy is our natural state of being. And so I want to read a quote that Michael had in the book. He said, paradoxical as it may seem, inner joy can be experienced in the midst of extraordinary challenges. To accept and work with this paradox is a practice of spirituality, is the practice of the spirituality and psychologically mature. And so he's saying, you know, if you can go through a really difficult experience, like coming to church in the morning and the air conditioning doesn't work, if you could go through a really horrendous experience like that and still be happy, internally know that it's okay, and that we can be happy and we can be joy-filled no matter what the external world is showing us. He's saying that's when we can know that we're spiritually mature. So Michael Singer wrote a book called The Untethered Soul, and he spends a lot of time talking about happiness too. And he says that we in our life have one basic decision to make. One decision. And here's what he says it is. Do you want to be happy, or do you not want to be happy? Do you want to be happy, or do you not want to be happy? And he said, it's a choice. It's a choice. And he said, so you go up to somebody and you say to him, are you happy? And he says, how am I supposed to be happy? My wife left me. And Singer's response is, so you want to be happy, but not if your wife left you, huh? Or you want to be happy, but not if you lost your job, or not if whatever's going on in your life. And he said, the question is, do you want to be happy? And you need to answer it without any qualification. No qualification whatsoever. So think about this now. Think about it in your own life. If somebody asked you, do you want to be happy from this day forward for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens to you, what would you say? What would you say? And Singer says you need to give an unconditional answer. Can't put any conditions on it. From this day forward, do you want to be happy for the rest of your life, regardless of what happens to you? And he said, if you answer affirmatively, not only will you be happy, but you'll become enlightened. And I think what he meant, he didn't really explain it. How I took it was, we'll be enlightened because we'll be facing the world in a whole different way. And he said, things are going to happen. Things are going to happen to us. We talk about it all the time. People die, relationships go away, jobs go away, kids go to college, friends move away, stuff happens. And he said, do you want to be happy regardless of what happens to you? That we were put here. We were put here to learn from our experiences, but also to enjoy our experiences. And events don't determine our happiness. They're just events. They're just events. And if you think about it, I'm sure we all have experiences in our own life where we've seen something happen to two different people and they have very different responses to it. Some people can be broken by an outside event and some allow it to make them stronger. So there's nothing inherent in the event that's going to make them happy or unhappy. It's how they face it, how the choice they make. We can be happy anytime we want, just to be alive. And when we live that way, our hearts open up. Ernest Holmes wrote, happiness and peace have always been ours. They are ours now, for they are the very essence and truth of our being. So I want to give you a couple of examples, two stories. One is just a story, and the other one is a real life story, and I'll get to it in a minute. So the story is, it happened a long time ago, at a time when most people were working the land, and this fellow comes to his rabbi, and he says to his rabbi, he said, Rabbi, my wife is so unhappy. We have a really small house. We don't have enough room. I don't make a lot of money. I can't afford to move. What should I do? You need to help me. She's always complaining. And the rabbi thinks about it for a little while. And he said, tell me, do you have cows? And the fellow says, yeah, I have cows. And the rabbi says, move them in the house. The guy looks at her. He said, Rabbi, I just told you we don't have enough room. The rabbi said, listen, I want you to do as I tell you, do as I say, come back in a week. So a week goes by, the fella comes in, and he says, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. My wife yells, there's so much noise in my house. We've got too many people, too many animals, too many things. Rabbi, what am I going to do? Tell me, help me, what should I do? The rabbi thinks for a few minutes and he says, do you have goats? And the fella says, yeah, I have a couple of goats. And he says, bring them in the house. And he says, oh, yeah, what are you, I can't bring them in the house. I told you this is not tolerable. The rabbi says, just do what I tell you. Bring them in the house. Come back and see me in a week. Week later, the guy walks in and he's like a madman. His hair is all unkempt. His eyes are bulging out. He's shaking. And he says to the rabbi, he said, you got to help me. He said, my wife is ready to throw me out. It's unbelievable. We can't live like this. Rabbi, I'm doing everything you tell me. What can I do? The rabbi thinks for a little while, and he finally says to the guy, do you have any chickens? The guy says, yeah, I got chickens. Why? And the rabbi says, I want you to move the chickens into the house. And the guy practically passes out. And he said, he starts to tell him how he can't do it. And the rabbi said, listen, I don't want to hear it. Do what I tell you to do. Come back in a week. Week later, the fellow comes back. When the rabbi comes out to see him, he's on his knees. Tears are coming out of his eyes. And he said, look, I did everything you told me. This situation is unbearable. We can't hear ourselves think. Help me, help me. And the rabbi says, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go home. I want you to take the cows, the goats, and the chickens, and I want you to put them outside. That's it. I'll see you later. The guy said, that's it? That's the only thing you got to say? And the rabbi said, that's it. And so he walks away totally demoralized. 2 days later, he comes back, and he's skipping and singing, he's dancing, he sees the rabbi, he grabs him and he kisses him, and he said, my God, you're a genius, man. And the rabbi said, what do you mean? He said, I did everything you said, I took him out, and he said, my wife is such a happy woman. He said, there's so much room in our house now. Our house is so big. Thank you. So we're going to leave that, and I want to go to a little different story, and now we'll come back to both of them. And this one, the second one is a true story. Actually, my son was supposed, that I'm going to tell you about, was supposed to be here with his family today, but his wife had an emergency appendectomy, which is just as well, because he probably would have been thrilled for me telling this story. But when he was 14 or 15, how old was he when we sent him to Phoenix? Oh, I could go too.
13.
How 14 or 15?
13.
He had a drug problem. So we enrolled him in this program. It was a year-long residential program at a place called Phoenix House. And we lived in Southern California. And it was in a place called Santa Ana, California, which is, for the most part, a very, very poor area. And that's where the drug house was located. And my son became really close friends with a young African-American kid that was about his age. And when Becky and I would go visit, if his parents weren't there, he'd come with us, and we met his parents. So one night, Becky and I are going to visit my son, and this young fellow, whose name I can't remember, he comes up to us, and he comes to me, and he says, Mr. Fox, could you and I go? Could we just talk alone, just the two of you? And I thought, oh my God, what did Scott do now? And I said, is something wrong? And he said, no, I just want to talk to you. So we go, and we sit down, just the two of us. And he said, you know, they do private therapy here, and they do group therapy that we call group. And we all go, but today, my son had been there 3 or 4 months. He said, today was the first time Scott ever spoke in group. And they kind of sent me to talk to you, to check out if what he told us was the truth. So I said, oh, okay. So he said, so you all live in San Clemente, right? And I said, yep, we live in San Clemente. And he said, and you have a really big house. And I said, no, we don't really have a big house. It's a nice house, but it's not that big. And he said, oh, okay. And he said, and it's 2 stories. And I said, yeah. And he said, and Scott, the bedrooms are on the 2nd floor. And he said, and Scott has his own bedroom, right? And I said, yes, Scott has his own bedroom. And he said, and there's a sliding glass door. And if you open it, he's got his own private balcony too, right? And I said, uh-huh, Scott's got his own private balcony. And there was this long pause, and he looked at me again and he said, with an ocean view? And I said, uh-huh, with an ocean view. And there was a really long pause, and he leaned over and he said, what the hell is his problem? And when I read the first story about the rabbi, I immediately, I went to Becky and I said, it just reminded me of, because there's so much similarity in both stories about allowing outside or not allowing outside factors to influence you. And in one, here was this woman who couldn't be happy where she lived, but when the rabbi taught her a couple of lessons, all of a sudden her house looked big and wonderful. And when I got done reading that story, I thought to myself, I wonder if she really got it on a deeper level, or if a couple of months that house is going to be too small again. And then look at my son, and here he lived in this gorgeous place, and I'll tell you all later if you're interested why he had the room with the ocean view. But here he is, he has a room, you know, with his own private balcony and an ocean view, and he was an unhappy guy. It didn't really do anything for him or for his life, you know, and I thought to myself, he and the wife might not have been happy no matter where they lived, because they were looking for the happiness in the wrong place, and what they needed wasn't another place to live. It was looking at a deeper consciousness, and that's what needed the adjustment. And I read this week, one of the people I read about, I'm sure you've all heard of Viktor Frankl, who spent years in a concentration camp and lost his parents and his wife. And I want to just read a quote from his, but I learned something else about him this week that I had never heard before, never read about before, and it really even broadened my respect for him, because in 1940, he was a real scholar, a genius, and in 1941, he had written a lot of papers that were published in the United States, and he was living in Germany. And the United States government issued him a visa, and his wife was pregnant, and they said, you know, come here, relocate to the United States. And he knew, he had this intuitive feeling of what was going to happen and what was going on in Germany, and he thought to himself, do I go or do I stay here, because my parents are going to need me to get through what's about to happen. And he did a lot of spiritual work, which is too long to go into now, and he made the choice to stay and to be there as long as he could to support his parents rather than saving his own life. And you know, when he after he suffered in the concentration camp, he came out and he started a whole new school of psychiatry. And one of his really famous quotes is that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in every given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And so he was saying that no matter where you are, no matter what your life is showing you, you have that choice. You can choose. Am I going to be happy? Am I going to be broken? Am I going to define myself as a victim? Or am I going to know that I can get through this? You know, Wayne Dyer, talking about happiness, said that it's not something we get from anybody. It's something we bring to everyone and to every event that we go into. And he said there is no way of happiness. There is no way of happiness. Happiness is the way. So I want to just close with a quote from Ernest Holmes. Holmes wrote, "There is a laughter of God. Let's laugh it. There is a song of the universe. Let's sing it. There is a hymn of praise. Let's praise it. There is a joy, a beauty. There is a deep, abiding peace. let's experience it. Thank you for being here. God bless you, and I hope you have a much cooler and great week.